This podcast is designed to provide information and support to those affected by addiction. The information provided in this podcast is intended for educational and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Listeners should consult with their healthcare professional before making any changes to their treatment plan. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast do not endorse any specific treatment, medication, or course of action. Individual experiences with addiction and recovery may vary, and the information provided in this podcast may not be applicable to all listeners. If you or someone you know is experiencing an addiction related crisis, please seek immediate help from a qualified medical or mental health professional. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts, guests, and producers and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any organization. The hosts, guests, and producers of this podcast are not responsible for any errors or omissions in the information provided in this podcast or for any actions taken in reliance on the information provided. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge and agree that you understand this disclaimer. Enjoy the show. Welcome back to another episode of Easy Does It, a podcast about changing your life, addiction, recovery, and methods you might approach and how to do that. If it's your first time here, remember to like and subscribe. You can also get the full audio podcast wherever you get your podcast from. And then the full episode would be on Patreon. Link will be in the description. Why do some people get sober and clean and why do some not? Because we've seen thousands of people come in, but very few of them stay. Why do you think? Because we just spoke about like therapy and its place in treatment. So I believe it has a place, but it doesn't play such a big part in stop using, right? For me, therapy plays a big part in understand why I do certain things and trauma and things like that. But there are other ways that I can change my life and do better and not pick up drugs or alcohol again, right? Or whatever other behaviors that I do. But I wanted to know from you, why do you think some people stay sober and some can't? Why do some people get clean and others can't? What do you think the reason is based on that? Like, because it's therapy and then there's 12 steps and there's religion. But why do some people get it and some don't? What do you think the reason is?
So I think coming back to finish off like in a way what I was saying is that I think the difficult part, Hilrick, is understanding that some people just hit a low much harder than others. And for myself personally, the pain that I endured throughout my addiction and my life, not just in those days, we can talk about stories of how heavy it got one day as this progresses. But for me, to answer your question, I think it comes down to not desperation. I don't think it comes down to, I think it comes down to three things. Okay, let me try and get my fingers in here. Three, all right? In every single addict that I've met or along my journey and that I've spoken to has told me there has been almost three times in their life where there's been distinctive reaching out from someone, whether it's family, a friend, or a stranger, giving them some kind of a message. All right. So for me personally, the only reason why I am still clean and sober is because when those lifeboats came along, I'll tell the story of the lifeboat, you know this, came along, I jumped into it and I was too scared to go back to where I came from. Now, that doesn't make me any better. In fact, sometimes I think of myself as less than other people because sometimes people are learning much more through their other experiences, but then life on life's terms is hitting me hard because I can't run back to anything when it comes up. So that's where therapy comes back into play in my life. So let's just say, for example, I had a rejection issue. And let's just say I was in a relationship and someone left me. If I hadn't worked on that, that could cause me to relapse, if you get what I'm trying to say. So why is it that so many people aren't making it? Some people just don't want to. That's simple as that. And then the others that want to, like, have to really bite the bullet and just go for it. That's it. You got to put in the work. There's no magic wand. I mean, I had to sacrifice. I had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning to go work so that I could pay for my secondary treatment. I mean, there was no money for that. I had to work to do that, and because of the stuff that I put in early recovery, gave me the tools to be able to face what was coming in the long run. I didn't know I would end up getting divorced or my fiance would die, and how was I going to deal with that clean and sober? I was going to deal with that clean and sober through the fact that I saw other people get through that stuff clean and sober. So I need to be in a community, and I don't always like everyone in the community, or I don't always agree with everyone. But the thing is that when I step, this is going to sound silly, but this is the reality. If I step out of the darkness into the light, I've got no choice but to get honest with myself and say, like, I don't know what the hell to do here. So I think, answering your question, I think a lot of people overcomplicate it and go like, but what is this addiction thing? Where did it start? Was it my parents' fault? Was it my school's fault? Was it the great grandpa who was the LP's fault? Or smacked the, what was it? You know what I mean? But is that as important as finding the solution and grabbing it? So for a lot of different people, like you said, some people take religion, some people take sports, some people take the fellowship, the 12-step fellowship. And I think the most important thing is to find an element of genuine self-honesty. And sometimes the universe or people, like I say, will give the opportunities, right? And someone will say something, and then a lot of people just go like, even me at times, before I got clean, I was like, no, but that's too much hard work to sacrifice the party scene. I was like a Dick Raver, like it was. And I was like, no, I'm not giving up on that party next weekend. And I kept prolonging it until I got to a point where I was forced to go, I'm going to have to change. I'm going to have to change. If I don't change, I'm going to die. In fact, a guy came to me on the street and told me, you're going to be dead within 6 months if you don't stop doing drugs. And I was like, whatever, bro. But when he walked away, I was like, you know what? I am actually dying. I'm dying from this. So I called it a cosmic
So before you carry on, so you said an important thing there, the honesty, right? Because I know what changed for me was I had honesty above all else, self honesty first. And then, because it doesn't really matter what I tell you, I go home with the truth at night, okay? I'm the one who sits in the corner wanting to use, wanting to go and drink, wanting to catch and cuck. And I know the truth. Nobody else needs to know. And I think that self honesty is the key. So, would it be fair to say those who couldn't get sober do not have the ability to get so honest with themselves? Because, or do they, like, because you mentioned a lot there. One, they do not want to. Two, they can't get honest. Three, were they not given this information? Were we fortunate enough to be told this bit of information? Because I know you never relapsed in addiction and alcohol, right? But I did. So was the truth always there, and did I just not want to hear it? The people who died, was the truth always there? Did they just not want to admit it or accept it or get honest? Or what, is somebody to blame for somebody not getting sober?
So then people could say to me like, am I responsible for the fact that my fiance passed away as a result of complications with me of our health? How can I be held responsible for the bigger picture of what other people's choices are in life? So here's the thing. For me personally, I can't get you clean. You couldn't get me clean. It's a shift that needs to happen, and it's the sacrifice and it's the acceptance. And then there's a whole process of change. Some people do it just by cold turkey, which, I mean, I would never recommend that. Some people go into treatments. Some people can't get into treatments. Some people are in the worst of worst situations and environments, and they get clean there. So how is it that some make it and some don't? I think that's coming back to the chicken or the egg. I mean, someone once said to me, so what makes you so special that you stay clean and sober? I said, no, nothing makes me special. I have to, when I get up in the morning, I have to admit to myself that I can potentially go back to where I never ever want to go back to. It's not like I can just like drop my laurels and I'm fine. It's like I have to work hard at this thing. But if I educate myself with what I need to do, I've got a plan as to what to do. So what I used to do in early recovery was I used to listen to the guys that were there for much longer than me and go like, whoa. And I remember there was this meeting, you'll remember this, that meeting in Colbay, and there was that dude that used to sit there with this big fat smile on his face, and he used to piss me off because I was feeling so depressed and sorry for myself.
Guy.
And he was 11 years clean. And I used to look at this guy and I'd be like, what the hell? This dude's like 11 years clean. How does he do it? He's lying. No, he's lying. He's talking shit. You know, that can't be. It's not. It's impossible. And I remember when I got to my first year, I was like, what? I got to a year. And on the cupboard, I had a couple of those little token thingies that you get. And, it was about setting those small goals. And people do get jealous and people get resentful and they go like, why are you getting it and I'm not? But what they don't understand is the tears, the sacrifices. At the age of 20, when I went into treatment, I knew that I was going to lose most of my friends. I was going to lose the girlfriend at the time, and I was going to have to give up the one thing that made me happy, which was the party scene and all the chemicals that came with it, because that's where I felt like I belonged. But then I was introduced to a whole different life, and that was scary. So I think, answering your question, I don't think it's that anyone's better than anyone else, because I've seen people, man, rock this thing called recovery that yes, man, are like flying. I think it's just a case of getting the right knowledge about what is addiction. Addiction is something that cannot be controlled in my human form. I couldn't control it. And when I asked for help and I put up the flag and I accepted defeat, I had to keep on following what was put in front of me. And I had to every time sacrifice something more of myself and trust the people that went before me and learn from their mistakes. And I've kind of, what recovery is for each and every one of us. We are pioneers in our own journey. The path has never been set before for any of us. So for me, I might really suck at my, like, say, doing basic certain chores. Other people might be flying at that now. But it's about progress. It's not about winning it. So when you said to me just now, like you'd relapsed after a certain time, that actually, the fact that you're back in recovery and now you've got a massive amount of just for today, it's actually about today. I went through a hell of a day today, and all I was focusing on was just getting through today. I don't look back at the last 22 years and I go, oh, I've got 22 years, so no, life is not going to kick me in the nuts. Life kicks me harder now, but here's the difference. I've now realized, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong with letting the cheeks roll down my face and admitting and going like, okay, I don't know what to do right now, but I have got a whole bunch of tools, and I have people that I can pick up the phone and say, hey. And if they don't answer, I can go, man, there you. Or I can go, okay, maybe they're busy, dude, and you've got to figure this one out on your own. So I think addicts, alcoholics are more fortunate today than what they ever were, because there are so many different options available. It's what works and what doesn't work, and it's just finding what works for each individual without finding a cop-out. There's no easy way to do this. I'm sorry to say this. It's sacrifice and it's hard work, and the results are amazing.